Okay. Good morning, children. We'll start continue with the multilocular radiolucencies, and today's topic is cherubism. We have been doing with the radiographic differential diagnosis of jaw lesions. Many lesions we have done. Last class we did ameloblastoma. Today we'll continue with the cherubism. I think all of you are familiar with this word cherubism, and you would have read in third year oral cherubism. Cherubism is also known as familial fibrous dysplasias of jaws, familial multilocular cystic disease of the jaws, disseminated juvenile fibrous dysplasia, familial fibrous swelling of the jaws, and hereditary fibrous dysplasias of the jaws. However, the term fibrous dysplasia is misnomer. The lesion does not have any characteristic like fibrous dysplasia clinically, radiographically, or histologically. Cherubism is a rare inherited developmental abnormality. This has an autosomal dominant trait, means it is not a sex-linked disease like allosomal dominant traits. Then it has 100% male penetration, and otherwise also it has a very high penetration, means the chances of penetration passing of the disease from the parents to the children is very high. However, the expressibility is variable, means though the child may have the gene, the presence of disease may or may not be there. Okay, this is what it means with the variable expressibility. What are the characteristic features? The disease is characterized by the bilateral enlargement of the jaws. It is kind of pathognomic feature. We cannot say it is pathognomic because pathognomic features are those features which are specific, fully specific to that disease, and when that is present, you can see that this is a disease. But cherubism is by and large has a bilateral enlargement. Rarely it will be unilateral, and it involves both maxilla and mandible. Only, however, the mandible is affected more, and when the lesion is unilateral, the mandible is usually affected. Okay, the lesion can be detected as soon as 1 to 2 years of the age, but the clinical evidence occurs around 5 years of age. Some people say to 2 to 5 years of age. Some books say that the clinically it starts appearing by 5 years of age, and most of the time it is clinically very well evident by the 10 to 12 years of age. The lesion auto corrects itself, means you don't, most of the time we don't need treatment, it auto corrects itself, and a spontaneous regression when the patient attains puberty, or by starts revolution resolution, this disease starts resoluting, and by 20 years of age the regression is complete in most of the cases. Okay, continuing further, yeah, I told you it affects both maxilla and mandible. Okay, the epicenter of the lesion is in the posterior aspects of the jaws. Epicenter means the point where the disease starts, and from there it starts growing. Like you must have heard when there are tremors or earthquakes, they say that the epicenter of tremor was at this particular place, and that show that places is the highest in what do you call it, the highest effect of that quack, and it increases all around it in the periphery. This is the epicenter, means from where the disease starts. So the epicenter in the cherubism is usually in the posterior aspect of the jaws. In mandible, it is the ramus of the mandible, and maxilla, it is the tuberosity of the maxilla. The lesion gradually grows in the anterior direction, and in severe cases, it may extend up to the midline, means right from the tuberosity till the central incisor. That means the entire maxilla and the entire mandible gets affected. Not always, but rarely, some cases. Okay. Now, why it is called cherubism? It is called cherubism because child gets a cherub-like appearance. Cherub they call a little angels. What you call a chubby cheeks, no? The swollen, plump cheeks. You can see in this picture, the patient has got. This is a patient who has got a full chubby cheeks. You can see here. So this is called as a chubby cheek appearance. Okay, this is also called a cherub appearance, and hence this disease is called cherubism. There is another characteristic feature of disease, that is eyes turn towards heaven appearance. The as though the person is always looking upwards, या भगवान ऊपर वाले लोग नहीं कहते हैं, same thing, that is eyes turn towards heaven appearance. The iris is towards the upper side, inside the upper eyelid, or towards the upper eyelid, and a wide rim of sclera is seen below it. You can see a wide rim of sclera is seen below it. This is called as though the patient is always looking upwards towards God. So it is called as eyes turned towards heaven appearance. So it has two clinical features, that is cherub-like chubby cheeks and eyes turned towards heaven appearance. Why does this eyes turn towards heaven appearance occurs? Because as the lesion, the maxilla expands, it infects the infraorbital rim and the floor of the orbit. affects the infraorbital rim and the floor of the orbit, which pushes the eyeball upwards. It pushes the eyeball upwards. First thing. Second, as there is swelling on the face, the bone has enlarged. The skin gets stressed. The skin gets stressed, and it pulls down the lower eyelid. So a larger area of sclera is seen. These are the two causes for these. Okay, in large severe cases, both maxilla and mandible can be affected. Uh, Already told you both, not both, entire maxilla and mandible can be affected. That is, when the lesion extends from the posterior aspect to the midline, means the entire thing is affected. And as a result of this, what happens? The patient does not look good, isn't it? He becomes aesthetically compromised. The patient is not looking good. The patient is worried. The child is worried. As the child grows old, he sees that he is not like the other children in the peer group, in his neighborhood, in his class. People start teasing him. There are so many things happen. So there is a lot of psychological impact on the children, and the parents, the family overall suffers. Right, this is very common. Many of you have suffered. Many of you know people will be teasing you for some reasons which is not your fault. I don't think it is correct to teach somebody for their physical appearances. No, the physical appearances most of the time is not in our hand. It has been given by God, and we should also not feel inferior or sad or biased about it. Means you have to accept what you have got and try to do be a good human being. Looking good is not that important. Means we should accept what look you have got, and if you don't feel bad, you will not have any psychological effect, and no one else can make you feel bad anyway. So now what happens other than these two things? There is a marked widening and distortion of the alveolar ridges. It is very obvious as the maxilla and mandible is expanding and growing, right? And the expansion occurs towards the buccal aspect more than in the lingual aspect. The alveolar ridges become larger, and there is a distortion of the ridges depending on which area it is growing more. As a result, what will happen? The tooth will get displaced and the eruption may fail. Why does this happen? I'll tell you later in the same class, on the same topic, that the primary teeth gets exfoliated fast because of the lesion. The resorption, physiologic resorption of the root of the primary teeth occur fast, and permanent teeth get displaced somewhere here and there. So all these problems occur. As the teeth either are lost or do not erupt or erupt in improper places, the mastication will be affected. Right, if the mastication is affected, patient's entire well-being is affected. If the teeth are not proper, the teeth are important for speaking many words, no? So the speech will be impaired. The jaws are not of proper size, they are not of proper shape, the tongue may not be getting accustomed properly, the teeth are not present, so the patient's speech will be impaired. It has a huge impact on the child, you know? In severe cases, as it goes further down and affects the bones around the middle ear and the nerves in that region, as the maxilla is getting increasing in the size, the hearing may be impaired. The hearing may get impaired, and if the infraorbital rim is getting involved more and orbital floor, if the eyes is getting pushed more upwards, that some nerves may get compressed and the vision also may get impaired. Right, in maxilla, most of the time the bone, the maxillary bone grows, the lesion grows at the expense of maxillary antrum. That means the maxillary antrums becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and the lesion becomes larger. Now the function of the sinus is to give resonance to the voice, maintain a healthy, what do you call that, mucosal lining or the mucosal floor, filtration of bacteria. All of you know all these things. There's nothing you must have read in your first year. So the voice will not be proper. Patient will have chronic cough, cold, all those problems the patient will suffer, which occurs because of the improper maxillary sinus development. These are the clinical features. So the clinical features is, the most important feature is that the lesion is usually bilaterally symmetrical. Both sides will be affected most of the time. Very rarely only unilateral is there. Not only both sides, most of the time both jaws are affected. So maxilla, mandible, bilateral affection affected is cherubism. Patient will have chubby cheek-like appearance, what we call as cherub appearance, and patient will have eyes turned towards heaven appearance. The tooth eruption will be disturbed, because of which patient's mastication will be difficult, speech will be difficult, patient's aesthetic is difficult, disturbed. All this causes a psychological impact on the patient and the family. The maxillary antrum is disturbed, which will have again further health effects on the patient, and sometimes the vision and the hearing may get disturbed. These are all about the good news about the cherubism is that Very good news that it is an auto-correcting disease. Means by the time patient attains puberty, it starts resolving on its own, and 80 to 90% cases, the patient is fully cured by his 90 years of age. Sorry, 20 years of age, not 90 years of age, 20 years of age. So that is a good news. Yeah. Now let's see the radiographic features. I'm more concerned about the radiographic features. As you can see in this radiograph, it is very obvious it is a multilocular lesion, right? You can see both sides symmetrical lesion. If you see carefully, the appearance of lesion on this is left side, right? Left side is same as that the appearance of the lesion on the left side, both maxilla and mandible. This is a characteristic feature of cherubism. Okay. The periphery of the lesion is usually well defined. You can make out where the lesion is from. You can see it is standing from the, this is the condyle. This is the cornoid notch. So from the, almost from the condyle, entire ramus is affected. The borders are affected for the thinning of the cortices, and it has come till almost the, this is second deciduous molar, means the second premolar area. Entire mandible is affected, entire body and the ramus. Only the central symphysis area is seen left. The same is condition on the other side. The maxillary you cannot see properly the boundaries, but from the entire maxillary tuberosity till almost the canine region the disease is affecting. Here also you can see from the, this is the second deciduous molar till the entire maxilla is affected. Okay. We need to write the periphery is well defined and corticated. Features include expansion and thinning of cortices. Little or no reactive periosteal bone formation is there. Means no reactive periosteal bone formation means in reaction like what we saw in the periapical granuloma or periapical cyst. If the bone was, disease was expanding, the body was trying to contain the lesion. You have seen, remember periapical granuloma when I taught you, and a well defined sclerotic rim is seen around the granuloma or the cyst. That is what is called as peripheral periosteal bone reaction. Or in Gary's osteomyelitis, there is a onion skin appearance, layers of periosteum bone. So periosteum does not react, or the periphery of the bones do not show any reaction, and there is no thickening of the periosteal bone at the peripheries. Okay, but the expansion occurs, and sometimes the cortices may get perforated. The expansion may be so big that the cortices may get perforated. I told you, I think around when I was teaching cyst, that when the cortices get perforated, this area where the cortices are perforated appears more radiolucent compared to the entire lesion. That appearance is known as cyst within the cyst appearance. It is called as cyst within cyst appearance because there the lesion is affected, appears more radiolucent because one cortices is gone than the other aspects of the cyst. Okay. Though the perforation of cortex occurs, the pathological fracture does not occur. What is pathological fracture? All of you know the what is fracture. Fracture is the discontinuity in the no discontinuity in the what you call continuity of the bone. The bone fracture, all of you know. The fractures are usually traumatic. Fractures are usually traumatic, but sometimes when the disease occurs, no, the starts destroying the bone a lot. Suppose a cyst occurs and affects this entire mandible, and then here there is a perforation, then the mandible may fracture from here. It becomes so thin, then sometimes the mandible may fracture from here. It is perforated, here it is perforated. The mandible may fracture from here, becoming so thin. If the fracture occurs because of some disease process, then it is called as a pathological fracture. So in cherubism, the pathological fracture does not occur. And as I told you earlier, the buccal aspect expands more than the lingual aspect of the bone. Lingual or palatal aspect of the bone expands less than the buccal aspect of the bone. Okay. What is the internal structure? Very obvious. As you can see clearly, it is a multilocular lesion. The septae are well defined. Now, this is the same radiograph I shown you earlier, the last slide. You can see the septae are seen so well. Here all these septae you can see. Here you can see septae. Here you can see septae. Here you can see septae. All these septae are seen so well defined. If you see in the mandible lesion and see this lesion, this is such a huge lesion. The maxilla is not covered in this radiograph. But see mandible, entire mandible from the ramus till entire mandible is affected. You just imagine the plight of this child. Entire mandible is affected. This is grown so big, but still in this lesion, all the septae you can see multilocular appearance, whatever you call as a honeycomb appearance or soap bubble appearance, like ameloblastoma it is seen. But how it is different from ameloblastoma? Ameloblastoma is not bilaterally symmetrical. Okay, it affects one side of the jaws. There may be instances of having ameloblastoma on both the sides, but they both may not be symmetrical. One. Second, it will not be affecting both maxilla and mandible. So it is very rarely that some ameloblastoma like lesion like will appear like this. So though the radiographic appearance is similar to ameloblastoma, there are other features which helps us differentiate it from it. Okay. So the internal structure is multilocular. The septae are well defined and opacified, means they appear white, right? They do not appear thin, means not appear such that they cannot be seen. There can be, the locules can be small, medium or large size, means a lesion may have all sizes of locules. It's not that all locules will be of small size, all locules will be of the large, like the central giant sternum. Usually there is thin wispy septae and locules are small. It is not the case here. In ameloblastoma, earlier stages, there is a honeycomb appearance, the locules are small. As it becomes larger, soap bubble appearance, locules become medium size. As it becomes very large, locules become very large, we get what you call as a spider web pattern. So there the locules are in one lesion, most of the time locules are constantly of one size. But here the locules can be small, medium or large size. The septae has large contours. They seem to be taking a rounded contours here. You can see the contour. You can see the contour over here. You can see the contouring of the septae over here. You can see it here. And sometimes the locules may appear within a larger lacuna. A larger cyst-like lesion may appear. Inside that there may be smaller locules. You can see here a larger cyst-like lesion appears. Inside that the small locules are seen. If you see this picture clearly or see this picture clearly. Okay. Now, as the lesion ages, means as the child becomes say 13, 14, 15, 16 years of age, these septae start becoming indistinct, means they start losing their characteristic appearance and it becomes a large cystic lesion like what you see over here. It becomes a large cystic lesions with escalopic at the borders. This escaloping, what you see here, scalloping means something how you take out the, you must have seen in the parties when you go, they serve ice cream. When they serve ice cream, they take out a scoop and they scoop out the ice cream so that the top surface of that ice cream brick, the large brick of the ice cream, where they take out the skip, will have multiple features of scooping. You can see that this ice cream has been scooped up. That's what the structure in the bone appears like that. We call it as a scalloping, as though someone has taken a scoop and scooped out the bone from here. See here, okay. No, this is like this. This is called as the scalloping of the bone. So as the lesion ages, the loculation becomes indistinct and leave only large peripheral outline with a scalloping, and it appears like OKC or odontogenic keratocyst. Now again, how it is different from OKC? OKC is again not bilaterally symmetrical and does not involve maxilla and mandible. And OKC, the age group is not this. Not always, but most of the times. Okay. Now what happens to the teeth, right? So when we write the radiographic features, we write the location. I've already told you. We write about the periphery. We write about the internal structure, and we write about the effect on the adjacent structures and the teeth. So what is happening on the teeth? The teeth can be seen floating within the cyst-like appearance. You can see the teeth are floating within cyst-like appearance. As there's large cyst in which the teeth are floating. One teeth is floating here. One teeth is floating here. One teeth is floating here, one teeth is floating here, one is floating here, one is floating here, one is floating here, one here, one here, here also. So many teeth can be seen floating inside this large cyst-like appearance. Now, as I told you earlier, there may be physiologic resorption of primary teeth is accelerated, means it occurs faster at an earlier age with a faster speed, and which causes the early exfoliation of the primary or the deciduous tooth. And at the same time, the permanent tooth does not erupt with the same speed. Though many permanent tooth may erupt, they may be displaced here and there. I've already talked about this in the clinical feature. This affects the mastication and the speech. However, even if the permanent teeth erupt, their root may be deformed or they may be displaced. Okay. So this was about the radiographic features. Clinical features I have revised. Radiographic features, it is the location is in the bilateral symmetrical, maxilla, mandible, both. If it is unilateral, then most of the time mandible. The epicenter of the lesion is at the posterior aspect. From posterior, it grows anteriorly in the anterior direction, and when in the extensive cases, it reaches up to the midline. Okay, the internal structure, This was the location. The periphery is well corticated periphery is there and well defined periphery is there. Internal structure is multilocular with locules are seen. The septae are well defined and opacified. The locules can be of multiple sizes. Sometimes within a larger lacunae, multiple small locules are seen. The teeth, as the lesion grows ages, the septae become indistinct and a larger lesion is seen. Cyst-like appearance occurs, which gives appearance like a OKC. Okay, what is the effect on the adjacent structure? The tooth get primary tooth get resolved faster and they exfoliate early. The permanent tooth may be floating inside the cyst-like cavity or they may erupt. Even if they erupt, they might be displaced or may have deformed the structures and the root structure. Okay, this was regarding radiographic appearance. We'll further now we'll read what happens when the lesion starts resolving. Okay, as the lesions become starts resolution, the locules become indistinct. Now you see the same patient further. Okay, the lesion has become indistinct and the smaller. You can see here now it has become indistinct. The resolving lesion shows diminished expansion of cortices and loss of septation. The septa start losing and the cortices start shrinking. So whatever bone was expanded, it starts shrinking. It becomes thinner and thinner, and the maxilla and mandible starts gaining its own proper structure. The proper morphology starts gaining. The internal structure gradually becomes, the septa are lost, it appears cystic, then it becomes granular, and gradually the entire normal trabeculae is formed. So how do we treat this case? For treating this case, nothing is required. We do not intervene till the patient is in the growing age, because there is no point intervening. You are just going to complicate the case. Once the maturity has been attained by the patient and lesion has stopped growing and most of the time it was resolved, some remnant features of expansion can be corrected for the aesthetic reason surgically. The surgical correction of the remnant features can be done. Okay, let's see the differential diagnosis. The differential diagnosis is the most important is giant cell granuloma. I've already discussed the differential diagnosis of OKC and differential diagnosis of ameloblastoma. Giant cell granuloma will start in the region, it may cross the midline and go to the other side, but it will not be bilaterally symmetrical. Okay, in giant cell granuloma, the locules are small and thin wispy septa are seen. Fibrous dysplasia, and both maxilla and mandible are not affected, and it occurs usually in the females at a second or third, fourth decade of life. Okay, second or third decade of life, not such young children. So when the cherubism is resolving, central giant glioma is appearing. Fibrous dysplasia is again the same, but fibrous dysplasia in the polycystic variety, polyostotic variety also, it will not be affecting in the pattern like the cherubism. And the radiographic features there are different. First there is a radiolucent, then there is a mixed radiolucent radiopaque, and then there is a radiopaque feature. So I think with this the cherubism is clear. I'll be covering lesion by lesion, one lesion, so that it is less headache for you. Next class I will be continuing about the odontogenic keratocyst. Thank you. If you have any doubts, kindly ask me on the WhatsApp.